Well, there's a lot to unpack over the last 24 hours, and of course the next 24 hours, which will be crucial. And I'm joined by American journalist, broadcaster Tom Rivers. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning, Holly.
Very good morning to you. Also on the line, we do have Erol Morkoç from Republicans Overseas, who's currently over there in the United States. Good morning, Erol.
Hey, good morning. Thank you for having me.
Lovely to have you. And we've got Inga Kemtrump, former chair of Democrats Abroad UK. Good morning, Inga.
Good morning. Nice to be here.
Lovely to have you all. Let's start with you, Tom. Let's start with what happened yesterday. We saw Trump addressing this. Well, it was a pretty excited, raucous crowd. Thousands of people in Washington for this victory rally, as he's calling it. The crowd seemed pretty jubilant.
Yeah, and a huge inbox, if you want to look at it that way. And of course, it went down very, very well. Compare and contrast, though. Either you are a Trump supporter or you voted for the Democrats. He was energized. He was alive. He was talking about optimism. He said that the country basically had been in decline for 4 years, and there's deep, deep dissatisfaction. I grew up in a blue-collar neighborhood who normally voted Democrat. Recently, we had our 50-year high school reunion. With the exception of 2 or 3 people are still on board with the union card, Democrats, most of my classmates are basically saying, look, we've had it up to our eyeballs with the policy of Biden. Let's go with Brand X. Let's go with Trump and see if he can solve the litany of problems described in that soundbite a couple of minutes ago.
Erol, listen to that. Erol Morkoç, it's an interesting way to look at it. The people are just kind of fed up. Are we in a situation where it's kind of, right, this is the lesser of two evils here now in terms of, well, he's not made it work, maybe Trump can?
Well, I wouldn't say it's a lesser of two evils. I think both men have been valuable American presidents in their own way. But I think what you have here is a change in American demographics. We are the party of the working class. 51% of the working class voters went our way. Our party is becoming more diverse every year. We won with married women. We won with men. We won overwhelming support with African Americans and Hispanics especially. And that's what the difference is. We are now the working class party, and we made a lot of promises to the working class, whether that be no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and finding ways to use international tariffs to bring back jobs that their community have lost. So you're seeing a change in the American demographic, just as that gentleman was saying, where working class union people are now on our side, and we have a huge responsibility to them. And I think that's the optimistic, progressive big tent that we have going forward, and something I'm excited to see President Trump bring to the forefront.
When you talk about it being a working class party, when we look at some of the faces who will be there today at the ceremony, I mean, some of the richest men in the world will be watching, getting the best seats in the house. You've got Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg all watching on. These are the CEOs of Google and Apple and TikTok.
Yeah, certainly. And these are people who, for their entire careers, gave money to the Democrat Party, including Elon Musk. 81 billionaires voted or donated to Kamala Harris's campaign. 50 billionaires donated to us. The difference is our billionaires, some of them like Elon, are innovators, great American immigrants who people look up to. Their billionaires are financiers and trust fund kids like Alex Soros. So yes, competent people oftentimes make a lot of money, and in America we celebrate that. Donald Trump has never shied away from that. He's never pretended to be a man of the people in the same sense that most politicians do. He always wears a suit. He always carries himself as a CEO. And I think he's finally garnered the respect of the American business community that really shunned him in 2016. And now they see we're on the precipice of a fifth industrial revolution with cryptocurrencies, with AI, with robotics. And this is the kind of president who's going to lead that charge. And that's why I think they're all there. They're all on board, and we're happy to have them as long as they play fair.
Yeah, Inga, what do you make of that? Because it does feel very different, even in the last, 5 years now. You think back to after the 2020 election, when Trump was kicked off social media effectively after the Capitol riot and all his baseless claims around voter fraud. All these companies are now treating him very differently. They're already doing things. They've already taken action to try to warm relations. Obviously, Erol mentioned there the investment. Trump, it feels like he's taking off at this time with a very warm welcome from America's power brokers.
I think there's a lot of feeling among the billionaires that he's got supporting him, the ones who will be sort of sitting next door in the executive office, that in fact they need to obey in advance. They need to line up with him this time. I think last time they thought maybe they could be defiant, but now, as you say, they're lining up. And frankly, it's an incredible danger for ordinary Americans because the kind of policies that Trump will be putting forward are going to favor them. They're not going to be favor the billionaires, will not be favoring overseas, voters. In fact, it's a little frightening when you think about all the stuff he wants to dismantle, stuff like Social Security, things like the what is commonly called Obamacare, things like that actually benefit ordinary Americans. He wants to take apart. So I'm not sure. And his support for unions has been pretty limited. I'm alarmed about what's coming. I'm alarmed about the policies he's going to have, and I feel sorry for those who are going to be impacted by these.
Tom, what do you make of that? Because Inga says that she's alarmed by some of these policies. And I think, we're all talking today about what's going to happen at this ceremony and all the build-up. But when that ceremony is over, President Trump will then be being judged on his actions instead of all these promises. And what he has promised is pretty seismic change, and from the very beginning.
Oh, very much so. And again, you look back historically, yes, we've had one-term presidents, but generally it is a two-term run you're looking at. So you have 8 years to kind of navigate and get on with your job, et cetera, et cetera. He's kind of boiled it down. The first time around, he had kind of a strange mixture in his cabinet. This time he knows exactly getting the right people, in his view, on board. And he's going to be hitting the ground running from day one. Potentially over 100 executive orders to be signed later on today at the White House. Your last talker was talking about worries about freedom of speech. Mark Zuckerberg is on board this time. He has described the pressure from the Biden administration on fact-checking, which basically censored, in his words, a lot of the Republican, if you will, social media posts 4 years ago. So it's a very, very different situation this time around. The proof will be in the pudding. As you say, what comes out of the pronouncements, what is going to be happening. And I think I totally disagree with your last individual. I think that a lot of people, blue-collar workers from the Rust Belt, who saw many, many things going to China over the past 30, 40 years, they are going to be looking very, very sharply at the policy, tariffs, et cetera, et cetera. Can we rebuild that part of the country? We'll have to wait and see.
What have you, though, made of some of the policies? Because some of them have had, I would say, a negative reaction. There's certainly concern, particularly his policies on immigration. And given the fact that he does have full control of the Republican Party, he's got majority in both chambers, is there anything stopping, Tom? Is there anything stopping Trump from just rounding up and deporting millions of undocumented migrants?
He's promised the largest mass deportation in American history. All your colleagues on here right now, their parents, grandparents, great-grandparents came from somewhere. And if they're of a certain age, they went through Ellis Island. So America is not anti-immigrant. They're saying do it legally. Don't do it illegally. And that's basically the crux of the Trump policy. You come on in, you have a green card, or if you have a lottery, that's fine and dandy. If you just hop over the border, that is not fine and dandy. And he promises to put people on planes and ship them out of the country.
Well, I suppose, and Erol, I'll put that one to you. It's not really that straightforward as things being fine and dandy or they're not. Because when you think about the logistics of this, if there are mass deportations, that could then in turn lead to a labour shortage in construction. And then you've got the issue of building more houses, which is another pledge. And it all comes full circle.
Well, that's an important point you brought up there, because it's an important point that Bernie Sanders and the left used to hold dear, was that you were supposed to protect your labor, and you were supposed to protect your labor by having strong borders. That was a Democrat principle. So the idea that we aren't going to enforce our laws and allow illegal aliens to be in the United States of America. When I come to Ireland, I get a big stamp on my passport that informs me that I can't even ask for benefits or work for a day. So, yes, it would cause a temporary labor situation, especially in farm jobs. And there's certainly a path to having ID cards and registries and keeping labor flows across the border. That's something that goes all the way back to the Bracero program and a lot of the nonsense that's happened at the U.S. border. And it's been manipulated by large corporations who've been taking advantage of this cheap labor, whether that be in meat packing or other parts of agriculture. And that's not fair. That's not fair to those people, and that's not fair to the American worker who isn't able to get a job because they're undercut by illegal labor. So all of this comes to a crux. I'm an immigrant myself, and 30,000 people from Turkey, where I'm from, have come into the United States illegally across the border. What does that mean? That means 30,000 guys who were in line in my hometown in Ankara aren't able to come here who are doing things correctly. And that's not fair. As the last gentleman was saying, everybody is supporting immigrants. Everybody in America basically is an immigrant. But the idea that illegal labor is somehow a benefit and we need to use it is almost like a Confederate argument for keeping slavery. I mean, it's crazy to me. It's unethical, and it's something that needs to end. The amount of abuse and violence that happens in these illegal undocumented communities towards these people because they have no recourse, that's something that can be stopped by stopping illegal immigration and putting people on the books. And this is what Donald Trump has promised. And deportations are a huge part of that. You cannot be committing crimes and coming to this country illegally as a crime and expect to get away with it or be rewarded, especially when people back home are not being given the same opportunities while they follow the laws that our country has put forth to their government. It's very unfair, and we hope to change it.
Inga, what do you make of this policy? Because this is arguably the one that has caused the most controversy, and it's something that Donald Trump has made clear he wants to do very quickly.
Few things. First, let's remember what happened last time when he built this now decaying border wall. He built up these detention centers and shopping centers. There were these horrible separations of parents versus children, creating this huge quagmire, all these people who were stuck in between. I mean, managing it is going to be impossible. And the border cannot be closed in that way. There are reasonable things that can be done with migration, and that was started under Biden. And unfortunately, Donald Trump has made this migrant crime wave the centerpiece of things. And the idea that violent crime is skyrocketing is just not true. And that undocumented immigrants are fueling the surge is even more of a fantasy. So it's really disturbing, the hate that's coming out, and we can expect a lot more of this. And we can also see this in the kind of people that Donald Trump is offering to have in his cabinet. And that I find disturbing. People like Pete Hegseth, RFK Jr., who doesn't even believe in science, Tulsi Gabbard, who has some real questions about her background. It's something we are really going to have to be active about. We can't sit back and let this happen. This is not going to benefit ordinary Americans. It is going to benefit a small group of people.
And Tom, again, there are other policies that he's mentioned, and I think he's very much going along the populist vote for a lot of these, which he'll need to do because everything will not be hunky-dory, as you say, and it will not be easy. But the releasing of those prisoners as well from January 6th and the riots, how do you think people will react and respond to that?
Well, again, in a sense, to his base, that will be applauded. And I think he's going to move very, very quickly on that and get that down and sort it out and take the hit or take the applause, depending on which camp you're in, very, very quickly. It'll be one of a variety of things. Other things like energy. He basically, you've got Elon Musk there, Mr. Tesla. But again, the president says, look, if you want an electric car, go get one. You want a hybrid, go get one. If you want a petrol car, guess what? You should be able to get one too. How many of these blue-collar working people can go out and afford an electric car tomorrow? You must be joking. It's impossible. It is something that is not going to happen. Full stop. He wants to open up again the pipeline that was shut down in the early days of the Biden administration and get, if you will, the U.S. On a level where they are certainly supporting their fossil fuel industry for now, until we get to a point where, somewhere down the road, the world can change. It is not going to change on a dime. We've learned that in this country with wind power, with solar. It just is not here today. It may be there 40, 50 years down the road. It certainly isn't there right here, right now.
Inga, in terms of how people have responded to this, obviously those who are, Democrats like yourself, there are concerns that, and people have said that he could undermine American democracy, he could try to rule as an autocrat. But the thing is, he does have a clear mandate. It was a decisive election victory in November. He won the popular vote and the Electoral College. He won a clean sweep of swing states. No matter his agenda, it has the green light from voters.
I'm glad you brought that up, because actually when you look at what he won, his vote was 49.9% of the national electorate. Harris was at 48.4. We're talking 1.5%. Then we had a lot of people who stayed home and didn't vote. And these are all things to be discussed. But when I hear the word mandate, I really actually have my doubts about what that is. And I encourage people to have, and one of the things that people also talked about were the split tickets where people voted for Trump at the top, but then down ballot, they also voted for Democrats within their state. And I think that sort of says that people were looking at two visions. They liked what they were seeing locally. They weren't sure about what was at the top of the ticket. And sometimes they had people who just voted directly for Trump and not for the rest of the ballot. So it was a very mixed message that we're getting there. But I tell you, I don't think the message that we're seeing is that it's an overwhelming mandate.
Erol, what do you make of that then? Because, as I say, some of these, we talk about blue-collar workers there, as Tom mentioned. So, some of the policies that will come in, people will not be happy with, but it comes down to the fact that this was a democratic vote.
Yeah, I mean, it was a democratic vote, and certainly 1.5% in today's world is what we consider to be a mandate because it works in the electoral college system. I understand that there's a lot of people who are skeptical on Donald Trump, but he was given a green light. He was given a green light by traditional groups that didn't vote for him. And I think that's what stands out here. So we have the House, we have the Senate, we have the executive branch, we have the popular vote. We have a clear vision. We presented that to the American people. They said, we like what you're doing. We like the forward-thinking strategies and economics. We like the border protections you guys are offering, and we want to see you do that. And we've made a lot of promises that are really important for us to keep, and I think it's important to us to maintain this big tent and move forward to increase our lead in 2020. Let's see, 2020, what year is it? 2027 or whatever the midterm.
I know the feeling.
Turns around. But the point is, we're trying to build on this. We're not trying to just have this 2 years and then lose the midterms. We want to win those midterms, and we want to bring more people online, more disengaged voters, more men. Men were never a voting bloc until this year. They finally fractured and became a real voting bloc. And that's when we can capitalize on and keep bringing disaffected people who want to get involved in the political process. Donald Trump is their candidate, and we're their party, and we're excited, and we think we do have a mandate, and we're going to push it.
But what happens then? So this 1.5, as you say, it's important because when things don't go their way. So whenever, for example, these major tax cuts for big corporations are introduced, the less of the populist moves start to kind of die away. And then, I think for most people, the general public, they're wanting things like lower prices. And economists are looking at this now and they're saying, well, that's probably not going to happen. In fact, the opposite is going to happen. The imported goods are probably going to push prices up even further. When that happens, Erol, what's the reaction going to be like?
Yeah, if prices go up, there'll be a negative reaction. But oftentimes with almost every product on the shelf, it comes down to the cost of energy. When you buy an apple, you're paying for the cost of refrigeration, trucking, transportation, and all of that is tied to kilowatt hours. So as we move into the fifth industrial revolution, as you look at Microsoft bringing 3 Mile Island back online, Google commissioning 3 new-build nuclear reactors, the future is green energy, and it's nuclear green energy for the amount of compute needed for the future and the AI future. And by bringing down energy costs as well as reducing taxes on individuals, yes, if everybody gets a tax break, people who make more money will proportionally get a bigger tax break. But if you were to reduce, say, the income tax and replace that with consumption taxes, that's what we're looking at. And I think that, we have to be very careful to make sure that we don't increase the cost of everyday goods. But I don't think that's really going to be an issue. We're more looking at bringing money back from abroad through forgiveness programs for tax cheats, let's say companies that have been storing their money abroad. And these kind of things are going to play to our populist base. And if prices start going up and we start doing something negative, we're going to hear that from our constituents. And because we have a guy like J.D. Vance in there, first millennial candidate, we're going to be quick on the uptake. We're going to listen to our voters and try to protect this new big tent that we've built, because it's going to be very precious for us going forward if we can deliver. It's really important for us to deliver to all the people we've promised this to.
And Tom, what do you think then? Once Trump does start to deliver, and a lot of the talk, he is a showman, you know, he says things that appeal to certainly his supporters anyway. Once they have been put in place, and then the kind of the devil in the detail comes to fruition then, like, as I mentioned, things like tax, you know, the prices start to go up, and he maybe can't follow through in things that he promised. What happens?
Well, again, there will be negative implications. But of course, as of right now, today, you've got the House, you've got the Senate, and you have the executive. So I guess the time to put the foot on the accelerator is right here, right now. And interesting as well, the joker in the deck as well is going to be Elon Musk, heading up this quote-unquote, if you will, Department for Government Efficiency. It is so incredibly bloated right now that, I think most Americans are looking at that and saying, that is just so much fat in the federal budget right now. There's got to be some leaning out there. And we'll see how that plays out as well. I think that would be viewed, if they do it properly, it'll be viewed very, very positively from coast to coast.
Inga, what do you think? Just as we mentioned Elon Musk there and this Department of Government Efficiency, as of today, there will be a lot of people, civil servants, out of a job.
Yeah, and there were some who quit in advance, I noticed, which is really interesting. But this is kind of frightening, and this is sort of the authoritarian playbook we're seeing in action here. When you ask people who are working for the government to put party loyalties, policy loyalties over professional competence. And so that is what people are being asked to do. They're not being asked on their level of competence. And there's this feeling that government is too, I fear for things like the Park Service. I fear for things like, again, the Health Service, Social Security, Department of they're going to be getting rid of the Department of Education, or at least that was the original plan, according to Project 2025. There's just a lot of normal things that will be changed, and dangers as well. We've talked about immigration. We haven't even touched on the policy for women's reproductive health, which is clearly under attack as well. There's this gloss that it will be decided state by state. But overall, the thing is against women having control over their own bodies, over their own reproductive health, and the Republicans are quite overt about this as well. So perhaps we are in a moment where it looks like it's going to be an exciting day for the Republicans, but I urge people to really look and see what's underneath and to see what's going to happen to ordinary Americans who aren't billionaires, and also to women who are going to be losing their rights and freedoms.
Do you know, Inga, it's interesting you brought that up. We are already getting a lot of calls on this, and I want to bring in Brian, who's in Belfast this morning. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning.
And Brian, this is something that is a concern for you.
Well, what I want to say is thank God the people in Northern Ireland know how to vote and know how to put the right people in politics. Because if we had an individual like Donald Trump in Northern Ireland, he wouldn't get a look in. And what annoys me is, especially women, I've heard many statements from women on the news media praising Donald Trump, when we all know his record against women, is in the past, his treatment of women, his attitude towards women, and it's on record. And women vote for this man. And I go back to Northern Ireland here. A person like that in Northern Ireland wouldn't get his foot over the door in any voting booth.
Brian, thanks.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, because I want to put this to Erol, because, you are from Republicans overseas, and this is an issue that Donald Trump has had to face time and time again. And there are people, thousands of miles away over in Northern Ireland who are looking on and going, you can't act in a certain way. You can't say certain things. And Donald Trump has managed to put this behind him, or has he?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you can say things, and it's a free country. You can say whatever you want. And Donald Trump is a father to 5 and a grandfather to 10. He's been on this country, on this planet for 8 decades, roughly. And I don't really quite understand how to respond to it because, everything's been put over the coals. Nothing has really come of it. There's been some uncouth comments. I mean, all right, but tell the married women who all voted for Donald Trump, tell my mother, tell my fiance, tell all the women I know that they're actually stupid idiots who don't realize what's good for them, for their own health.
I don't think Brian suggested they were stupid idiots. It's just, that some people are surprised by that.
Yeah, but you can be surprised by it, but you can also respect the fact that that's not the only thing about Donald Trump. If you boil people down to individual situations like that, look at every president. They've had random accusations. Bill Clinton, if he did what he did now, would have been crucified. So, I don't believe the accusations that have come out against Donald Trump. The majority of the country who voted for him, nobody voted for Donald Trump going, oh, yeah, this guy is against women, but I'm voting for him as well. That wasn't a voting bloc. So the majority of people in my country don't think that he's the person that gentleman who called in described it, and we showed that in the polls.
Brian, thank you very much again for your call on that. Tom, I'm going to finish with you, and I think it's important to say that today is a huge day. Mm-hmm. I say today for those who are over in the States, the day hasn't even begun yet. I think it's about 1 o'clock in the morning. But when the inauguration happens, Donald Trump is president. What do you expect over the next few days? Do you expect positivity, the continuation of the village people up on stage, the dancing, the celebration, or what happens now?
Well, I guess the immediate will be to see which of the dozens, potentially hundreds of executive orders he will be signing and signing off on a lot of the policies of the Biden administration. So the next few days, watch that very, very closely. I believe on Friday, he'll be heading out to California. A lot of criticism of the handling of the wildfires by the governor there, the mayor there, et cetera, et cetera. We'll see how that one plays out as well. Turn the corner into the next week. Man, as Trump says, it's going to be an important day today, an important week, an important 100 days. As I say, he's not playing for 8 years. He's playing for 4. So again, he's coming and going to be making his mark early on. Watch and see where the chips fall and see exactly what the implications thereon will be. I think that this is going to be an administration the likes of which you and I have never seen before.
It'll be one that we will certainly be watching. Tom Rivers, thank you very much for your time, and thank you so much to Erol Morkoç from Republicans Overseas and to Inga Kemtrop, former chair of Democrats Abroad UK. A little bit later than usual, hope you don't mind. It is 9:36, so let's get your BBC News headlines.